What's Kenny working on? Finished prepping 99 Kenny Brown CSR-R Cobra for competition in NASA AIX. That's Roy's car on the dyno. We worked with Tony the Tuner. You've heard us talk about Tony the Tuner remotely to get that kind of tuned. We had somebody tune it last year that I really wasn't happy with the tune. It is like tailpipes were black and they shouldn't be. So we got air fuel right at about 12 and it's looking good. I should have put the dyno sheets, but here, why don't you grab the dyno sheet off my desk? The power is so linear. It's totally amazing. And it actually was pulling, it's pulling like a freight train. You can see now across the bottom, that's our air fuel ratio, and that is pretty darn good. And then on the top, look how smooth and linear that motor pulls. And we stopped it at 7,300 and it was still pulling. So this will probably make power well over 7,500, even up to 8, because it's a like Series 1 or Gen 1 Daytona prototype motor, which we'll get into. But we're pretty happy with that. It came up with about we got let's see about 440 at the rear wheels, which means we're about 510 to 515 flywheel. And if you going back to the original Daytona prototypes, and we'll show you that here in a minute, it wasn't Ipswich, it was Grand Am was running that, and they had for the Daytona prototypes 500 horsepower was it. You had that it was a limit of 500 horsepower. You couldn't go over that. So seeing this is kind of like a Gen 1 motor at 510, 515, we're right in the ballpark where they started. So without further ado, let's look at a little bit about Roy's car. Okay, my assistant, there we go. That's Roy's car. That's actually, Roy's car has improved a lot since then. It's got more aero now. It's got wing. It's got big fender flares because we're running a 315 front and a 335 rear. So it's got plenty of tire on the ground on Forge line 3-piece wheels, which you've heard me talk about Forge line. You want the best wheel available, it's Forge line. So there's another good shot. I mean, that's such a sweet little car. That's such a sweet little car. Ringing my bell. Okay, when I talk about Daytona prototype, this is what the Daytona prototypes were, and I can't remember the years. Somebody out there might, but it goes back a ways. And that's what a Roush Yates Daytona prototype engine looks like, and that's the last. That's like the last generation before they stopped using those motors. And that has the bigger heads. It's got the carbon intake manifold. I mean, that's pretty cool. I originally wanted to put the whole engine into Roy's car, but we ran into a couple problems. As you can see, the intake manifold sits pretty high, and it's pointing the wrong way. That can flip around to go to the front, but at the same token, we had to make some big modifications to Roy's hood, and we really didn't want to go that far. Plus, we would have had to put a standalone fuel injection system on there, and at the time, we wanted to kind of keep it as simple as possible because it's already a stupid expensive motor. So that's the last generation. I was actually going to put the Daytona prototype heads and my FR500 magnesium intake manifold on, except when we set the FR500 on the heads, the ports didn't match up. The ports were much bigger in a different place. So we had to scrap that idea and go back and use my prototype FR500 heads, which is exactly what the first generation of the Daytona prototype engines were. And seeing as they were 500 horse and we were like 510, 515, we're right there with Gen 1. Okay, this is kind of what it looks like all in pieces. And I won't get it all. We've had a lot of trick stuff inside this motor. I mean, guys at Roush Yates really know what they're doing. I won't share all of them with you, but I will share a little. This is the block. It's a 5-liter block. 4.6 base. It's a 5-liter block, but it's not like any other 5-liter block that we've worked on. You can see it's got extra ribbing. It's got a whole bunch of extra bosses to bolt things onto it, like dry sumps. In fact, this is a dry sump motor. There isn't even a provision for an oil pump on the crank. But it's like super heavy duty. I was really impressed with just how nice the block was. And here's one little trick that I'll share with you. This is a crankshaft, and you can see that the counterweight on the crankshaft has been shortened. If you look at it where it used to be and where it is now, there's a lot of it's not there. Plus, it's been totally polished and super smooth. That's just one of the really cool things we found inside the motor. And these are DP heads. I mean, you can just imagine how much air you can get through those. And yeah, that'll flow a lot of air. And these are the super lumpy, bumpy cams I had Comp grind up for us. These are road race cams, and they're pretty hot cams. And you can tell they look like eggs. They don't look like a normal camshaft. Okay, there's I talked about my GT500, not GT500, FR500 intake. That's the FR500 magnesium intake. Now, originally that had it had like the little flapper plates and had long runners, short runners. And what we did is we actually, the bottom of the manifold comes apart. So we took that off, put a plate in there, and we blocked that off. So there's no long runners, just short runners. And we took the little butterflies out. So that's just a straight shot into the cylinder head. I mean, that's a pretty cool intake manifold. And here, we'll go through a little bit what's in Roy's car, just so you know. Obviously, full competition cage, strut tower brace, got the matrix system, jacking rails. Rear shock tower brace is actually sort of welded in. And then we've got the AGS 3.5 suspension with hard mount IRS carrier in the back that's had all the geometry upgrades. I didn't finish reading. Three-piece forged line wheels, 315s front, 335s at the back. And for brakes, he's got the totally awesome Kenny Brown, that's me, Pro 4R race brakes, which are really amazing. I mean, you want a good set of race brakes without breaking the bank, this is it. I mean, especially just considering it's a 4-piston, it's lighter, it's got all kinds of super features, and it takes the same pad profile as our 6-piston race calipers, except the pad's an inch thick, which is pretty cool for the front. Okay, we went too far. Okay, here's AGS 3.5. I mean, on the left, you're going to see the front grip kit, which is the K-member, control arms, front sway bar, and also caster plus is shown in there, which is, caster is incredibly important in my geometry. So caster plus we've got them as the Fox and SA95. What I did is I eliminated the caster adjustment on those plates, a camber caster adjustment. So by eliminating a caster adjustment, I actually pick up at least another half a degree of positive caster, which is what I like. And then the right is the AGS 3.5. That's the rear IRS with a modified carrier, lower control arms, upper control arms, forward torque brace, aluminum diff bushings, and the rear steer kit. And then when we do the geometry upgrade, we take all the rear steer out of the car. That's something, if you've been following me with the IRS cars that we found, I discovered it while doing testing FR500s down at Road Atlanta with Ford Racing. I got to a certain, in the last corner down the back of the straightaway, last right-hander, got to a certain point of the corner, every single time the car would get loose. Went back and looked, did the geometry, and sure enough, when you get to a certain point, it rolled both rear wheels, steer the wrong way. So with the basic rear steer kit, we take about half of that rear steer out, roll steer out, and with the geometry modification of the carrier, we take all of it out. So now the big question is, see if anybody can answer this. What's the difference between AGS 3.5 for the street, for the track, or for racing? See who can answer that. I'm going to give you time to think about it. And there's the Pro 4R brakes that I was talking about. It's a massive caliper, but it's really light. And you can see that it's a full race type caliper. It takes like 30 seconds to change brake pads. And wouldn't you love to be able to change brake pads in 30 seconds? Okay, then more content. This is like, I'm getting into spring, so I've been like sneezing and coughing all morning. Even though there's not that many things blooming yet, I think my body's just kind of warming up knowing spring is coming. For the engine, of course, it's a modified Daytona prototype, but basically a Series 1 dry sump. Aero, we got the full aero package. We got fender flares, wheel wickers, racing hood, vented racing hood, rear wing, and side splitters. Remember we talked about side splitters earlier? And of course, it's got the triple pass radiator, which is necessary for that kind of competition. It's got the IRS rear diff cooler. If you've got an IRS car and plan on doing track days, you absolutely have to have the rear diff cooler. The reason is when you've got a live axle car, you've got all that massive steel to absorb and expel heat. Well, with IRS, you get this little tiny little aluminum pumpkin that there's no way to get heat out, so they overheat pretty quickly. And then we also, because this is a race car, we also have put a competition 2-pass oil cooler on it. And then take weight out, we put Lexan windows. Of course, you got race seat and harness, and there's a whole bunch of extra little tweaks that I'm not going to tell you about. That's only Roy's car, and I know about. Of course, Kurt knows about him too. Roy's built this car over 6 years, maybe. It's like after every season, it comes to us and it makes the next upgrade, next upgrade, next upgrade. Now, this year, it kind of came to us, kind of not for an upgrade, but to fix the engine. I think the second last race of the season, the first lap, the first lap is where most people do stupid things. Not Roy. Roy was good. He was on course. Somebody 2 cars back totally blew it, missed their braking point, whatever, and careened in the car in front of him. And that car caught Roy in the right rear corner panel and spun him around. And Roy happened so fast, Roy didn't get the clutch in soon enough, and the motor actually went backwards, which is a pretty good feat. And because of that, the secondary timing chain broke, and of course, bent all the valves. So we had to go back and kind of rebuild the right side of the motor and get them ready to go again. But then we still did a bunch of little upgrades. We always do a bunch of little upgrades. It's just the little things that really make a difference.